So, as we know, all theists believe in objective morality. Now, I know that there are some atheists who also believe in objective morality, but I would say that atheism and objective morality are fundamentally incompatible because obviously if there is objective moral truths, objective moral rights and wrongs, then there has to be a judge of these things. There has to be some sort of authority for them. And as they say, a prescription needs a prescriber. So if you don't believe in God, then you cannot say that objective good and evil exists. So this is usually one of the arguments given for the existence of God. If at least one absolute moral truth is shown to exist, then God must necessarily exist, and I'd stand by that logic if it was true. So by far the most commonly held argument that I've seen for the existence of objective moral truths is that we know them through a form of intuition. They say that we just know right from wrong, and apologists will, or theists will quite often use very emotional examples to illustrate this, such as child rape and child abuse and things like that, um, and say that this is a universally wrong act, and they think that this is a good example because not many atheists would disagree with them. But that in no way shows that the actual act is universally wrong or evil, separate from our opinion on it. In fact, their intuition-based explanations for our thinking that certain actions are right and wrong are based, I believe, entirely on biological principles. So it's quite clear that certain actions and it's quite clear that certain actions and behaviours have been removed from our biochemistry through evolution. If we were genetically inclined to think that murder, rape, and child abuse were good, then the human species would have died out a long, long time ago. And the commonly held view in modern evolution is that we as a species have come to be what we are now through a form of mutual cooperation. It is in the best interests of mankind and our species to feel compassion towards one another, to help our fellow species and extend our gene pool. And this is the reason why we don't generally have any inclination towards raping children or anyone else for that matter. Of course there are always going to be exceptions, but a form of altruism does exist when it comes to our relationship with our fellow species. And so this is why we intuitively feel a certain way whenever we hear stories of horrific child abuse. Not because we instinctively know that it is universally, objectively, morally wrong, but because our biology has told us that this type of behaviour is not beneficial to our species, and so it produces a reaction within us that makes us feel anger towards those who do this type of abuse. And so, in a way, it could be argued that we are mistaking a kind of biological motivation towards a certain behaviour with some sort of absolute standard of right and wrong. And indeed, if I did see someone abusing a child or whatever, I wouldn't just stand there and think, oh well, objective morality doesn't exist, therefore he can do whatever he likes. The natural compassion that I feel towards my fellow species will motivate me to prevent that type of behaviour from occurring. And so all of these types of feelings that we have about right and wrong, that we have instinctively, can be explained by biology without there needing to be any kind of objective truth about them. Now, it's been noted that in the animal kingdom that a lot of other animals in nature commit murder. and they commit acts of rape, they commit acts of theft, of land and resources, and excuse me, and pretty much every other sin or moral wrong is committed by other species on one another, just like we do, as the occasional exception to the biological rule. Now, objective moralists will quite often say that these animals lack free will, and so that when they kill another animal, it is out of necessity, to kill them for food, and they don't consciously know what they are doing, and that when they kill another animal, they don't commit murder, they just kill because they are inclined to eat. And this isn't really an argument at all, because one could argue that we don't have any free will, for a start. And there is no fundamental difference between a man killing a fellow man and a lion killing another lion because it's trespassing into its land and threatening its alpha male dominance or whatever. So animals don't act out of necessity either. It's been commonly said that if you were to put a fox into a chicken's den, it won't just kill one chicken and eat it. It will slaughter all of the chickens and then only take away one of them to eat. This is just one example of a non-human act which is done way beyond necessity. And so the objective moralist's argument from necessity is just nonsense, and it makes no difference whether the fox knows what it is doing or not. And another problem with this view is that how do you judge what is universally right and wrong? Do we judge it by some sort of utilitarianist principle, for the greatest good for the greatest number? Is it okay to kill one person to save 100 other people? These types of examples are not just metaphorical examples. There will and have been cases where people have had to make similar type of decisions, often in wars and things like that. And so do we take the utilitarian view, or do we take a more kind of objective, kind of Kantian view, that all murder is wrong and all lying is wrong and all stealing is wrong? And if in that case, aren't you wrong for allowing 100 people to die because you couldn't bring yourself to kill the one person to save the other 100? Or what do you do if somebody knocks on your door with an axe and says, "I'm gonna kill your children, are your children in the house?" You can't lie to them and say no, so you'd have to let this guy kill your kids, basically. And this was a problem that was put to Immanuel Kant at the time, and he basically argued that you would have to tell this axeman that your children were in the house. You would have to do that. And so how do we judge what is a right and wrong action? For the Christians out there, for Christian theists, in the Bible, God commands humans to slaughter entire tribes. So how do we explain that, even though God gave Moses the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill"? Is this some sort of utilitarianist account? That it's okay to kill a tribe, to save, for the greater good? Or, is God an exception to his objective moral rules? And, if this is the case, then, morality is clearly not objective. Now, some people often also say that atheists commit more murder because they don't believe in objective morality. But as the late Christopher Hitchens quite rightly said, he showed that Hitler was a Catholic, and that Hitler actually admitted so in Mein Kampf, when he talks about doing the work of the Lord and things like that. And there's lots of other evidence that he, as well as his top Nazi officials, were religious. And so that would also explain perhaps why the Vatican kept quiet during the Second World War about all of his apparent atrocities. And as far as the case of people like Mao, Chairman Mao, and Stalin, I mean, Stalin was a follower of the Russian Orthodox Church, which was very much a part of his culture. Um, and the emperors of Japan, who committed atrocities, they claimed themselves to be gods. They claimed themselves to be not just emperors, but some sort of god on earth. Um, so it seems to me that people are also much more inclined to commit atrocities when they believe that they have some sort of divine authority or some sort of divine mandate. If someone believes that God is behind them, then that God has given them orders, then they're going to be driven to commit atrocities in a way in which atheists couldn't possibly be. If just look at suicide bombers, for example. They die believing that they are doing God's work. And how many atheist suicide bombers are there? An atheist has no drive, no otherworldly inspiration to go out and commit such atrocities. Now, if I'm not saying that all atheists are good people, because obviously they're not. Everyone is human. Everyone does sort of bad things. But when you believe that you have God or some sort of divine authority on your side, then you feel that you have the right and authority to do anything, and you can be driven to do actions in a way in which atheists simply couldn't be, because atheists do not have this divine mandate. Now, and this idea of saying that there are no moral facts, or rather the idea that saying there are no moral facts is the same as making an objective moral statement. Therefore, by saying all morals are relative, we are actually making an objective moral statement. I mean, this is just absurd. I mean, this is something that objective moralists always talk about, where they always accuse relativists of doing. And I mean, it's just absurd. It really doesn't work like that. I mean, having a belief in something doesn't necessarily justify an assertion of knowledge of it. It's not really a kind of a knowledge claim. Um, so to conclude, I think that the best arguments for the existence of objective morality is generally through some sort of intuition, or rather, that's the best argument that they can come up with. But this intuition can be explained by biology without having to appeal towards any type of higher power or objective truth. And even if we did concede that objective morality exists, then it's still problematic as to how do we judge what is right and wrong. I mean, is it based on universal principles, as you would think that it should be, or is there some sort of moral hierarchy that I've heard some objective moralists speak about? So if anyone's interested as to the origin of moral values and where they came from and how they came about, I'd advise people to read up about Nietzsche's master and slave morality, as he explains how these notions of objective morality came to be over the years. So, yeah, cheers.